Pakistani Christians live in a country where most people believe the wars of Bush and Blair in Afghanistan and Iraq are an attack on Islam itself. This tiny Christian community is caught in the middle of the clash of civilizations, and the blasphemy laws, they say, are a sword hanging over their heads, an ever-present threat. Campaigners say the old law, which banned insulting any religion, wasn't problematic. But two laws from the 1980s are producing miscarriages of justice. One made insulting the Prophet Muhammad a capital offence. The other made defiling the Quran punishable by life imprisonment.
The general level of intolerance has grown a lot in the last 2-3 years. And one reason may be this blasphemy law has brought about more intolerance. This law is so vague, it should be repealed altogether. But we get a lot of opposition from the conservative Islamic extremists.
These laws are used to falsely accuse Muslims as well, stresses the Archbishop. It's just that as a community, Christians and other minorities are vulnerable in a way that Muslims aren't.
We live in fear. We're among Muslims, so we avoid conflict with anyone who could take advantage and cast the accusation of blasphemy against us. We have to give way, even when we're in the right.
The problem with the laws, say their critics, is that it's too easy for false allegations to be made. Here in Faisalabad last autumn, two elderly illiterate Christians, James and Bhutto Masih, were sentenced to 10 years in jail for blasphemy. Their lawyer, Khalil Tahir, has taken me to meet the families. Their problems started, they said, when James's daughter, who works as a maid for a Muslim family, was given a sack of rubbish to take home.
They said to me, Nargis, you take these things, 2 broken bikes to fix, and give them to your kids. Some pieces of wood and some waste paper. They said it was rubbish, that I should burn. My dad was going to feed the animals in the fields and he burned the paper.
Rumours spread, she said, that he'd burned pages from the Quran. It was their Muslim neighbours who stopped an angry crowd burning down their homes. Even so, she and other Christians fled. Her father and one of his friends were arrested. Khalil Tahir says a property dispute may be behind the accusation. He says none of the witnesses were local and he can't imagine how they could have seen anything. He also believes the judge was intimidated by demonstrators.
All this evidence is fictitious, frivolous and baseless. In Pakistan, you know, the fanatics can kill even to the judges.
As we leave, he tells me that whenever there's an attack on Afghanistan or Iraq, there are repercussions for his community.
This is written in the Quran that all the Muslims are brother wherever they are. So they feel ourselves that we and Americans, and they just feel that Bush and Tony Blair are our relatives.
Radical Muslim groups, he says, always agitate for a guilty verdict. One reason possibly why the lower courts rarely acquit. The higher courts almost always uphold appeals because of problems with evidence, but that can mean years in prison as a blasphemer. Shahid Masih's also been accused of defiling the Quran. I got ill with weeping when my son was arrested, says his mother. Shahid was in prison before getting bail. He's now in hiding while he awaits his trial.
They arrested me and started to beat me harshly at the police station. Then, when I was taken to jail, I was forced to do sanitary work, and every day when I got back to my cell in the evening, they beat me, the guards and the other prisoners. I was frightened I might be killed.
Christians generally are a poor, marginalised community. Many are the descendants of Hindu Dalits, or untouchables, who converted during British rule. Some have made it into the middle classes, but most are still collecting the country's rubbish or working as servants. Muslims are certainly not safe from false accusations either, but almost everyone I've spoken to outside the minority communities say they back the law. It's a difficult issue because they were enacted as true Islamic laws, albeit by the military dictator, Zia al-Haq.
Thousands of people gave sacrifices for this law. If the government changes it, no Muslim in the world and no child in Pakistan will be able to bear it. We'll oppose this on the street.
This is known as a radical mosque. but I wasn't prepared for the apocalyptic nature of people's fears.
If the government changes this law and allows the cursed ones to utter any nonsense they like and raise two fingers against the Prophet, the Muslims will become emotional and kill people. There'll be chaos. There'll be blood on the streets of Islamabad.
It's difficult to imagine two more different views. The blasphemy laws are God-given and prevent the intolerable offence of insult to the Prophet, or they're a major cause of injustice. Before Christmas, the government hinted it might change the law, but when I asked the Minister for Justice about this, he objected even to my question.
This is direct interference into the internal affairs of my own country and state, which we don't like. We are independent state, we are sovereign, and we don't do anything under any pressure. This is all propaganda and false allegation. This propaganda mainly is being done by the community over here, just that they can get repatriation from here, they can get settlement in abroad, they can get visas.
Christians and other minorities are counting on the government to change this law, but it's difficult to see anything happening soon. The government would have to be prepared to withstand major protests from radical Muslim groups. And they'd need to convince the majority population that they weren't just giving a freedom to blaspheme.